If I could have the next slide, please. So going to introduce a video now, which is from one of our great facilitators on our wellbeing activities, Brian, who we've been doing art with, and he hopefully will articulate a bit more about partnership working from his words. So if we could play the video now, please.
About 5 years ago, I met up with Aja Thanet and we looked at how we could help with running art classes and helping people in isolation and loneliness to come out, interact with another group and learn a skill at the same time. I run a project called Looking Ahead, where we work with young adults with learning needs and we help them to develop their skills towards independent living and work. We train them up in a work environment and then hopefully find them employment or employ them ourselves. By Aja Thanet coming in to my art classes, that helps to fund my project. So by both working together, it really complements one another. Okay, a little while ago, we worked with another project that Aja Thanet introduced us to, and it was a group called Changing Minds, where I went out to them. Instead of them coming to me, I went to them and taught them the art. And it was a great time. I loved every minute of it, and we were changing people's minds just by showing them that they could paint. And it was a great time. We had a lovely exhibition, and in fact I think we sold some of their work, which surprised them.
Thanks very much. If I could have the next slide, and you may have noticed that we popped the link into that video into the chat. So if you want to watch that at another time, just link on the chat. Thank you very much. So Aja Thanet, the brand. We're really conscious about how important the brand was, and with every part of our project, and this was no exception. We built the brand starting from careful and deliberate consultation with local older people. And the stick of rock image that you see on the screen with the pink words of Aja Thanet really resonated with local older people, Thanet being a seaside area. So that's where the image took its inspiration from, sorry. But it was really important that we took a lot of time in carefully consulting with the local older people of Thanet to share with them what they felt, what a good brand might be, and get their feedback. And this is what we ended up with. And also the brands was then reinforced in several ways. So, for example, I mentioned earlier how we always introduce ourselves as being from Aja Thanet. So again, reinforcing the strength of the overall partnership, that those words would always be used. And using strong marketing material that represents the project rather than our own organisation. So again, it was that constant message about Aja Thanet and not the individual organisations that helped reinforce the strength of the brand. And significant use of social media has really helped strengthen that brand across all the various platforms that you'd expect. In particular, and again, based on consultation and feedback from older people, Facebook has been very strong for us in reinforcing the brand and getting the message out there. While we're a relatively small project compared to some of the other Aging Better projects, we've got over 3,800 followers on our Facebook page, brand being constantly supported out there. And it's not unusual for our monthly reach figures through Facebook to go into the tens of thousands of people reached with our various marketing messages about our services and so on. That's a real trick I would recommend people get behind. And the trusted brand has helped develop referrals and build trust with referrers, and helped older people easily recognise quality services they can tap into. So where they see that logo, they trust that logo, and therefore the service that goes alongside it. Okay, if I could have the next slide, please. Okay, so Claire touched on this earlier, and this is an example of the co-production, the partnership, and the branding. So the Age of Thanet reward card, which is free, has been supported by about 400 local businesses, enabled this brand to grow. So all kinds of businesses, you name the business, we've had one of those businesses associated with Ageless Thanet. And it took partnership working to a whole new level. So if you can imagine, you know, the closer partnerships that we were working in with the 5 work streams, this took it to a whole new level with working with around 400 businesses across the Isle of Thanet that really tapped into this. And it's a massive hook getting the older people interested in the project. People would say, can I be a member? Can I join Ageless Thanet? And those, when you think about those questions, that really does demonstrate the strength of the brands and what has come, what got us to the strength of the brand, that the partnership work in the co-production, the consultations with the older people of Thanet. So those questions of can I be a member and can I join Ageless Thanet are really quite powerful on the back of all of that work. And you see there it says 9,000 older Thanet residents. That's over 15% of the population of the over 50s population in Thanet, we're particularly proud of. Okay, if I could have the next slide, please. Okay, so how does this approach benefit co-production? By the way, this picture is of 3 of our amazing volunteers who gave up their time to form part of our government's panel and been involved for many years on the Ageless Thanet bit, and we're really grateful for them and others that give up their time and do such a great. So how does this approach benefit co-production and project success? So bringing in partners with specialist skills and experience means it is more likely to succeed and have a greater impact. Perhaps that's an obvious statement, but one that really resonates with what we have achieved. Because we are one project, it helps to build trust. Less confusing for people having to remember what organisation you're from, and this trust means people feel more comfortable getting involved in co-producing. So again, it comes back to that strong message about it is Ageless Thanet. Different organisations coming on board with the project, fully believing in what we are trying to achieve. It's a lot easier to get the word out as all the partners have their own connections, and that belief was really important. Problem solving, it helps to reduce all kinds of barriers because we can ask each other. I alluded to that earlier on. We could easily just pick up the phone or email any of the partners for help and answers, and they were always forthcoming. Lots of people get involved in all areas of the project. We don't believe would necessarily be the case if our brand and our partnership approach wasn't as strong. It makes it easier for them to get involved. And a joined up communication approach helped too. Communicating as Ageless Thanet, not individual organisations. And I know I've mentioned that a couple of times. I can't emphasise how important that has been. Okay, if I could have the next slide, please. So top tips that we'd like to share with you. So the top tips from our learning are things like, in the early stages of the project, we had some partner organisations who didn't buy into the approach, which led to their work streams not being successful and caused problems for the project, which damages the project reputation. So some, hard conversations had to be had back in the day, which were important conversations to have, which again underlined how important it was to us in Ageless Thanet that it was that joined up approach. We were working to a plan that we would all buy into and all represent and all say that we were Aegis Thanet. And it's important to work with other organisations who are open to working in this way and not stuck in their ways in regards to how they work. And the lead organisation, Social Enterprise Kent, were very determined to achieve this from the start, and that has been threaded right the way through over the years, and has really helped the project be successful. Having a clear vision from the beginning. At the very beginning, we said this is going to be a proper partnership, and this is why we introduced ourselves as being from Aegis Thanet rather than our own respective organisations. It was always about putting the project first. And I personally believe that some of the colleagues I have on the Aegis Thanet project, I'm actually closer and have a closer working relationship with than some of my colleagues within my own organisation, because of how tight and focused that approach was from day one. So I'm really pleased and proud to say that I have strong colleague relationships with all of the partnerships in Aegis Thanet. Test and learn approach, you may have heard of that, which has been amazing for us on the project. So it's not about being afraid to make changes if it isn't working. So we again always used to use that phrase that we would challenge things. Are they working? If they aren't, do we try and change them? Or can they be changed? If not, we just park them and we report on what doesn't work, but then get on to stuff that does work. And if it does work well, we do more of that. But that test and learn approach really enabled us to try different things, change the perception of ageing, and in regards to wellbeing activities, just going back to Claire's point, how we were really determined to change the perceptions of ageing by providing activities that perhaps weren't normally perceived to be for older people, to things like burlesque dancing, boxing, ballet, and things like that. And always have the end user at the heart of what you do. You can't do this unless you work in co-production, and we were relentless about having the end user at the heart of everything we do, and always consulting with the older people of Thanet in all different ways, be that online surveys, be that when we could do it face-to-face group meetings and focus group meetings. We would do that consistently throughout the length of the project, and we will continue to do that going forward. Have the next slide, please. Okay, the Aegis Thanet Club. So the Aegis Thanet Club is one of our best, or a few examples, or perhaps one of our best examples of co-production, where older people have been involved in the design and delivery of the club from the very beginning, and have now taken full ownership to enable the sustainability. It was born out of a consultation meeting. So where we had wellbeing activities that people would come along to, so be it burlesque, art, Tai Chi, whatever it might be, at the end of those sets of activities, people would want to do more. They'd want to continue with their the friendships they've made, and maybe meet up and do other things. So we got that feedback initially. So then we would say, okay, well, how do you want this to work? What do you want to do? And we helped facilitate consultations with older people in group meetings, online, and things like that. So we could really gather that feedback from them and what they wanted, and using their real lived-in experience to help us with that journey and help them go on that journey. And that's when the Aegis Thanet Club came from initially. Okay, so the next one is I'd like to play a video which will hopefully elaborate a bit on the Aegis Thanet Club, and then we'll talk to Pam about it as well.
The first thing I got involved in was finding a location where we could just have a casual club of people, like-minded people. We thought about having the games brought along. Some people donated games, and then I applied for funding to get new games, and the funding came from the community fund.
Organising this gives people an interest, and we get roughly 25 people a week turn up, so that gives them something to do on a Monday morning. But then a number of people came along who were lonely. Most of them in that category now come along as regulars, and I think they've moved on to other things as well.
I'm on my own, so this is some of the things that's very important. You can talk to people, you can get advice from people, and yeah, I would find it very difficult not to have a place like this.
I think for our cognitive well-being, to keep brains healthy, I've always been a believer that you need to exercise it, in which these games that we play, they're fun, but it's also about cognition. It's about planning what your hand you're going to take, about counting skills. It's about your brain is a muscle, the way I think about it. It's a muscle, and you have to keep using it in order to stave off horrible things like dementia. And I think socialisation is also, from what I've read, is a good way of staving off these types of dreaded diseases, if you like, that you can potentially get in older age.
I'm very gregarious, I talk a lot. I mean, without people like, well, around here, who do you talk to? You don't do it in the street anymore.
Thanks very much. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, I'm really proud to introduce Pam now, to hear from her in regards to involvement in setting up the Ageless Thanet Club. Morning, Pam. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Ageless Thanet?
Yes, hi, good morning, Ian. I initially moved to the area in 2017, coming from Essex, and I didn't have any family, I don't have any children, so I had no one really around here, no friends, no nothing. So once I'd moved into my bungalow, I got to know my neighbours and made friends with them, which was great. But I knew myself that I needed to make more contacts and to become part of the community. So my neighbour Ruth told me about seminars that were going on in a place called North Down House, run by Ageless Thanet, and that one was due to come up in the morning, and for us just to walk down there and see what it was all about. So I went with them, and we went down to North Down House, which is where I first met you, Ian Barker, from Your Leisure, and you were kind of running a little meeting with a lot of people from the area, asking what we wanted to do and what our expectations were and what things interested us. And there were lots of discussions and lots of feedback. But I do remember my neighbour Ruth, she stood up and she said that she thought it'd be a good idea to have social mornings, just a social low-key events, coffee, a chat, just small get-togethers in people's houses. And there were several nods from the room at that stage, and people were saying yes, they wanted to go on board with that one. So she got a few names. And also Heather Biddles was there, and she helped get some names together. So initially Ruth was having us, I was one of them, having us round in her lounge. There was about 8 of us of an afternoon, and we would have a chat. We started playing ball games. And then we decided that it might be better to broaden it out to the rest of the people that were at that seminar at North Down House with you, Ian. And so Ruth went along to Tesco's. She'd heard of the community room there and spoke to Sue at Tesco's. And Sue had heard of Ageless Thanet. She knew what the organisation was about. And therefore she said, yes, most definitely, you can use our room on a Monday morning and come along. And Heather had also had contact with a men's group over at Broadstairs. And she'd spoken to one of the men there about this group that was starting to run and asked if he would be interested in joining in. And that's Chris, who just spoke on the video there, and he became chair. And I got involved and became secretary. So we started meeting at the Tesco's community room, and via Heather, who had all the contacts of the people within Ageless Thanet, the service users, I guess you call them. She contacted them and let them know this thing was starting to run. And people would come to Tesco's. It's easy to get there. You get the bus there. They could do some shopping and then come up to the community room just for a chat, just to see what was going on. As I said on the video, we had some games donated. We had about 8 separate tables that you could fit 6 people around. And then we had different tables would start, one would play perhaps Rummy Cub, another would just be chatting and talking and catching up with each other. We had 2 teachers come to the group who were very good at Mahjong, and they taught people Mahjong. We had card games, and it was just a really good social group, very laid back, and people would come regularly. And as Chris said on the video, people would come for a chat and then they would find out other things. And subsequently with Ruth's group of people, they organised a couple of coach trips and holidays. So it sparked more groups coming from there as well.
Thanks, Bram. That's a great story that you've told there, and obviously I'm aware of that story as being part of it, and it was a privilege to help with that and what you guys have done. So you touched a bit on the likes of Heather getting involved and me getting involved. So how do you think the Ageless Thanet Club benefited from having these different partners involved?
Well, obviously you yourself, first of all, I haven't gone to your seminars, and we just thought you're Ageless Thanet. I didn't know the difference at that stage. Heather Biddles from Ageless Thanet, she came to several of the meetings when we started out. She was always there to support us. She helped us populate the group, the Ageless Thanet Monday Club, by getting people to know where we were, what time we were happening. She even did leaflet drops at the front door there as people were coming in, letting them know about Ageless Thanet and also about the club that was running upstairs. She helped me apply for funding because we had some games, but particularly one game was really popular. We had 2 tables that wanted to do the same game. So she helped me apply for funding to get those games. Also at Christmas time, one of the large manufacturing industries in the area wanted to do something for the community. They'd heard about Ageless Thanet. They contacted Heather. Heather contacted us, which meant that a coach was put on. We're all taken up to this place in their big social room, and a fantastic Christmas dinner was put on. And it was just absolutely brilliant the way that it all worked together. And the group, as I said, the group strengthened. There were coach trips that came out of it. A cruise was done, a short cruise around the Mediterranean. Obviously, all that stopped at the moment. But as it was, as lockdown, it was at its peak. Really, it was really going from strength to strength.
Thanks, Pam. That's amazing. I'm constantly in awe of you guys, by the way. Last question for me. How have you benefited personally? I know Claire alluded when she introduced you to do with ukulele and so on. So I don't know if you could tell us a bit about that and how you've benefited personally.
I can't say enough how much I've been, not only from making friends and now being part of the community and having an active part in the community, but through your well-being activities of learning to play the ukulele, which I found about through being part of the Ageless Thanet movement. I also learnt that particular skill and have now formed a group of other people that learnt that skill. We've now got a ukulele group. I've made so many friends within that group. I've got the experience of having done the funding application originally through the Ageless Thanet Monday Club. I brought that into the ukulele group, and we've applied for a bass ukulele and music stands, such like. And also I was able to apply for funding for a ukulele festival to be held in Margate through the community, the Ageless Thanet Community Fund. So again, it's just one thing leads to another, and it's all originally about me making friends, but it's all, I hope, benefited me and benefited a lot of other people as a result of originally the seminars that you held at Northdown House.
Thanks, Pam. That's thank you very much, and hopefully our audience have really benefited from your insights. That's really grateful for that, for you and your time. Thank you very much. If I could have the next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Claire now, who's going to look at any questions that people might have.
Thanks, Ian. So we've had just had a couple of questions, and actually they're kind of the same. Talking about the Ageless Thanet reward card and what the benefits are, and how the rewards work, or how the activities are charged. So maybe if I talk about the reward card, Ian, and then you can talk about the wellbeing activities, because it's slightly different. So I mean, the Ageless Thanet reward card is free for our 50+ residents, And in return for the businesses signing up and having access to all those, you know, the 9,000 card holders, each business can offer a particular discount or special offer on production of the reward card. So for some businesses that might, you know, cafes and restaurants, that might be a free drink when you order a main meal, or I know some did sort of coffee and a pastry for half price on a Wednesday morning. So the idea was that it was to connect businesses with individuals. But what we saw as we were going on was that lots of our reward cards benefited hugely, or reward card holders, sorry, benefited hugely. So we had local carpet fitters, for example, who offered a certain percentage off their carpets and carpet fitting. So I know some people saved sort of £200-300 on that. And we've got some really great examples of that. We also used our businesses for holding coffee mornings. So when we were able to, we held regular coffee stops in some of our age-friendly businesses. And the businesses themselves were listed on our website. We have a special app which shows you which businesses are local to you, and a directory that was published twice a year, so a hard copy directory, which was something that we realised not everyone could access the app or the website. So having a hard copy produced was a really, really good thing to be done, and that was distributed across different points in Thanet. So I hope, Marion and Joe, that's answered your question about the benefits of the Age of Thanet reward card. But obviously do pop something in the question if it hasn't cleared it up, and I can answer that separately. But maybe moving on to Ian, and one of the questions is, how are activities charged?
Yeah, of course. So originally our activities were free. The funding was in place to provide free wellbeing activities for a certain period of time, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, that sort of thing. And that was because it was about gaining evaluation. So we would ask participants to complete a questionnaire at the start and at the end, and that would measure the impact the wellbeing activities had on quality of life, physical wellbeing, mental wellbeing, isolation and loneliness. And we're really proud to say that we collated a significant amount of evidence which demonstrated by taking part in these activities, all of those measures were significantly improved. So that was the sort of first few years of the project. But from day one, we always spoke about and always consulted with older people about what does this look like beyond the funding, how if you like doing these activities and you want to carry on doing these sorts of activities, how can we make that happen without funding? So as we've alluded to throughout this webinar today, we always would consult with the older people of Thanet, and through Google poll surveys, through face-to-face meetings with all different kinds of demographics to gather as much rich information as possible. And the upshot of it was that people loved the activity so much and understood the value behind doing the activities, improving their well-being, that they were willing to pay for those activities going forward. And again, we consulted on them on what does a good price look like for 8 weeks of Tai Chi or art or whatever it is. So we now have a chargeable model in place, which just covers the costs of the venues, covers the costs of the facilitators, and a bit of administration time. And the costs, if you're interested, so for example, something like Tai Chi will charge £4 a week, and we tend to do it in blocks of 8 weeks, so people will pay £32 to come along, and the number of attendances that we had prior to lockdown, and we're hopefully due to start again towards the end of May, the classes would be full. So from the feedback that we got around the pricing and kinds of activities and where, and we basically did what we were told by the older people of Thanet, and it proves that what they said wanted, and they've come along and enjoyed that as well. Hopefully that helped a bit.
Thanks, Ian. And I think this is a little bit of a follow-up question here, asking about whether the scheme relies on volunteers or are instructors paid?
So So we do, so with the paid activities, we use various instructors who are paid, so they're not volunteers, and that's based on the kind of activities that we are providing, and some of the experience and qualification along with those particular activities. That said, there have been volunteer volunteer-led activities throughout the duration of the project, and that will no doubt continue as well. And the chargeable model and the free activities run by volunteers sat very well side by side, and both were very popular. So it's a combination of both, really.
Thanks, Ian. And now a question for Pam, and actually it's probably might then move on to you, Ian, to look at this as a kind of wider partnership impact about COVID, really. And Pam, the question is, have you been able to keep the Aegis Thanet Club going through lockdowns via Zoom or telephone group meetings? And do you see the club getting back to normal soon?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's been very limited and sporadic because our group was quite, how to say it, not many of them were particularly happy using emails, and they preferred things by phone. And I know that one of the members from Aegis Thanet, Pam, another Pam, she was doing regular phone calls for everyone that had supplied their phone call, just to make sure about their well-being and keeping them up to date. So we've lost track really of where we are now, to be quite honest. I don't envisage Tesco will allow us to use that room even when things start opening up, because it's such a confined room. It had no air conditioning. So we're kind of, things are just in abeyance at the moment, unfortunately.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, it's had such a, we've often said we've spent sort of 5-6 years encouraging people to get out and socialise, and in the space of a year we've unfortunately gone back quite a lot. So so maybe a follow-up question, Ian, that might be useful to answer is how has COVID then affected kind of the partnership working and co-production?
Yeah, so it's obviously brought challenges in regards to impactful partnership working, but we've used the technology as best we can to maintain our partnership and our working, and I honestly believe that as a partnership and as a group, we still have very strong connections. We continue to help each other with challenges that we come across. So that side of it hasn't changed. If I think about the specific wellbeing activities and how COVID's impacted on those, we have been providing wellbeing activities online, but only a selected few. And it was interesting. Again, we consulted with the older people of Thanet about online activities, what they would like, how it would work, help they would need in dealing with the technology and so on. And while there were some people that embraced it and have been embracing it, the numbers are significantly down, because people just obviously benefit far more by being face to face and enjoying each other's company. To give you an idea, we would, pre-lockdown, when we were doing face-to-face activities, and as I alluded to, we hope to start that again towards the end of May, we would have 20 to 25 wellbeing activities going on at any one time about a week, whereas the most we achieved of online activities, not for the want of trying, was about 4 activities at once. So it has had an impact on how people want to engage and are willing to engage with the wellbeing activities. But from a co-production point of view, it's brought its challenges, but we've managed to still engage with different people and get feedback and suggestions and answers.
Great. And I guess, what we've been doing sort of practically internally to keep the partnership running is we kind of quickly moved team meetings to online, didn't we? So we didn't lose that continuity. And also really enjoyed the informal lunchtime chats that we had. So, one of the difficulties with Zoom, isn't it? You miss that kind of interaction at the beginning and the end of a meeting. It sort of puts a bit more of a formal structure to things. So we kind of continued that informality through a lunchtime catch up over Teams every Wednesday. So we could talk about the pets and the running and the pulling your hair out for the homeschooling kind of stuff, which was really important, that part of the the working ethic. We also continue to host our governance panel meetings with older people online, and that was quite interesting, because at the first couple we took a lot of time to support some of our particularly the older governance panel members to get online, and I guess we learned that maybe the first time you do things, it's not as successful as it would be face to face, and a lot of time is spent. Can you hear me? You're on mute, turn your camera off, kind of on those sorts of things. But it's been really important to maintain people's insight into the project and their connection with the project and with each other has been really important. I've got one more question. Is there any literature for further reading about this project? We have lots of learning reports, Joe, on our website, which is www.ageofthanet.org.uk. And I'm sure if that web address isn't right, someone will correct me in the chat. So we're currently producing learning reports around all of our work streams and all of the areas of the project. So they give quite a lot of detail and talk about a lot about our approaches and our successes, and lots of great tips like Ian gave in his slides. We've got some really good tips about the different areas as well. And I think we've probably got time for maybe one more question. So I'm just reading, sorry. The question was from Steph Green, but actually it's Martin Green. Thank you, Martin. What was the biggest challenge you faced as you drew the partnership together?
I guess the greatest challenges about bringing the partnerships together was about the joined up message and everyone buying into that. And for some that was really easy, and some got it from day one, but some took time to either understand it or a willingness to take that on board. In regards to the lead partner, Social Enterprise Kent, and the project lead for that, that they were really determined to make sure that everyone, all the partners, brought into it, and that was a really strong approach early on in the project. For the first few months, that message was revisited and revisited, that this is what we've signed up for, this is our aspirations to make Thanet an even better place to grow older, and to constantly consult with the older people of Thanet and learn from them, so we can do things differently, we can change that perception of aging. So I guess the challenge was about everyone from all different kinds of partnerships, different organisations with different values and different cultures coming together and having that one strong Ageas Thanet culture and brand. But I'm so glad that was the intent, and that was the relentless approach, because Ageas Thanet wouldn't be as successful as it has been, and that little sticker rock logo that you see, as trusted and recognised as it is in Thanet in general. So that was the greatest challenge, and there was some tears and tantrums along the way, but it was absolutely worth the pain to get everyone singing from the same hymn sheet, because of what we see today and the result from today.
Great, thanks, Ian. Got just a couple of questions, but I think we might need to answer at least one of them offline. So one of them is Georgina asked about social strolls. Georgina, can we get back to you? I don't know when they're going to be resuming, but I think they will be soon. And I know we've got volunteer-led nature walks starting soon. So we'll get back to you about that if that's okay. And then the final question was from Alison, who wants to know how we developed the brand. But I'm thinking we've got 5 minutes left of the webinar. Ian, are you happy to take that question now and then follow up afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be connected so we can follow that through. It was a long journey, and we alluded to it a bit on the presentation, but it started out with a few ideas and suggestions that were then shared with older people of Thanet to get their feedback and understand what resonated with them. So then eventually that Stick of Rock brand image was decided upon, but that was only the start of the journey. It was about how that brand was then strengthened and recognised, and I alluded to marketing material that was generic, and it didn't feature your leisure in a strong place, or the Citizen Vice, or whatever. It was about that Stick of Rock and getting that message out there, and the services being associated with that. And I touched on Facebook and how powerful that's been, and there was lots of learning and how we get that right, the images that we would use, the wording that we would use, and again that was always came out of consultation with older people, and what images they thought worked well, what didn't, and wording. So it was a long journey, but again, because of that relentless approach to consulting with older people, and that co-production approach, it is strong because of what it is now. And clearly the reward card and the 400 businesses having that Stick of Rock in their window on a sticker helps massively get the brand out there as well.
That's great, thanks Ian. And I know Alison's going to send us her email address, so maybe we can have more of a chat after that. I'd now like to hand back to Vicky, I think, who's going to close the session.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you to everybody, and thanks for everyone for your questions as well. It's great to be able to open up the conversation today around the Ageless Thanet partnership approach to co-production. And Ageless Thanet will be back with us during our Festival of Learning, actually in May, and we'll be running a workshop for us, which will be more interactive. So the conversation will be able to continue as part of that, that session. And I'll be in touch afterwards. I'll give you the link to our national YouTube channel, so you can catch up on the recordings of any of the sessions that we've already delivered, and we'll also be sharing the recording to this session today as well. And it's really great to hear from Pam today as well, so thank you, Pam. I appreciate you coming in and working with us on the webinar, and we look forward to sharing some more webinars with you over the next week. We're coming towards the end of our series now, but we still have got a few more webinars coming up in quite close succession now over the next week or so. So please do pop on to the Eventbrite page, which I'll share with everybody, or I have already shared with everybody actually that signed up today, if you do want to sign up to any of the other webinars that are coming up. And you'll have my email address as well. So if anyone does want any further information about what's coming up, but also from Ageless Thanet specifically, then just drop me a line and I can make sure that that I can put you in touch with them as well. So thank you once again to everybody that's attended today, to everyone that's taken part, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully again at our CoPro Festival in the coming months. And I'm going to end the webinar now.